Welcome back. A team of foreign doctors has arrived in the war-torn Libyan city of Benghazi to carry out heart surgery on at least 30 young children during a month-long flying visit to a country where healthcare is in tatters. The doctors are providing treatment that's otherwise almost impossible for Libyan families to obtain due to the collapse of the health system and an economic crisis that makes sending patients abroad unaffordable.
This team of foreign doctors have been visiting eastern Libya since 2012, but they did not go to Benghazi for 2 years because of fighting that has destroyed parts of the city and is still raging in one downtown neighborhood. The international team is led by William Novick, an American doctor who set up a foundation that has provided care for children with heart disease in more than 30 developing countries. They train local staff as they work.
The 10-member U.S. medical team, led by Professor William Novick, arrived last Friday, and they include nurses and doctors. This is the 8th medical workshop to be held, and they perform open heart surgery and cardiac catheterization on between 20 and 40 people.
Initially, the trips to Libya were paid for by Libyan public funds, but they now depend on private donations. The health sector, heavily dependent on foreign staff before Libya's 2011 revolution, has been crippled by their departure in the turmoil that followed. Medical supplies and equipment are in short supply, and many hospitals are shut or barely functional.
So I've found that the situation has very much deteriorated since 2012, and I'm sure that it is not diplomatic for me to say it is a direct result of the chaotic government that currently exists, and the hospital is not receiving adequate funding to maintain itself, to purchase supplies, to really take care of the patients. And if you think about the city of Benghazi and the area, and I mean, this is the major hospital. So if this one is having difficulty, imagine what the situation is like for the rest of the hospitals. Thank you.
Most of the children being treated by the international team are under 3 years old. Khalida Falah's 19-month-old daughter, Zara, has a heart defect that was discovered the day she was born, but has now only been treated.
She is 1 year 7 months old, and we received basic treatments to maintain the condition, as there were no possibilities for medical care. The diagnosis was wrong many times. When the diagnosis was correct, surgery had to be performed. You can say that the surgery should have been performed before last October.
A UN-backed government has been trying to establish itself in Tripoli since last March, but Haftar and the Eastern government have rejected it. Across the country, public services have continued a slow decline.
In East Africa, rights activists have marched through the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, to demand justice for lawyer Willie Kimani, who was brutally murdered last year alongside his client and driver. The incident put the police on the spot over extrajudicial killings, and 5 policemen have been charged with murder. The protesters from the rights group International Justice Mission, or IJM, took a petition against extrajudicial killings to the office of the Inspector General of Police and the President's office. Mr. Kimani's client had filed a complaint against a police officer. The 3 men were reportedly kidnapped after a court appearance in June last year. Their tortured bodies were later recovered from a river in central Kenya a week after they were reported missing. A plaque to honor Mr. Kimani as a fallen hero of justice was also unveiled at the Supreme Court Museum. In West Africa, a Chinese-owned fish meal factory, Golden Lead, has settled out of court an environmental pollution case it was facing in the Gambia. The company had been accused of discharging wastewater into the sea, polluting the environment, withholding information about their waste management, and failure to keep track of its activities along Gambia's coast.
Gambia's National Environmental Agency agrees to settle out of court with the Chinese-owned Golden Lead fish meal factory, which it had taken to court for pollution and flouting proper waste management regulations. Golden Lead is to pay a bond of $25,000, take immediate measures to treat its wastewater, and pay for testing of already contaminated water. The company's owners denied dumping wastewater into the sea.
They were supposed to have a waste treatment plant in situ on the factory itself, so that they treat their wastewater and then they apply for a discharge permit, so that we're able to conduct a water quality analysis test to ensure that, to establish that the wastewater that they're going to discharge into the water body is not going to cause any.
The dispute started in May when thousands of dead fish washed up to the beach of Ganjur, a small fishing town in the southwest of the country. Initially, environmentalists were up in arms because they thought the waste from Golden Lead's factory had killed the fish, but later found they had been dumped there by Gambian and Senegalese fishermen unable to sell their catch to the fish meal makers. NEA fined some of the fishermen and had reached an agreement with the factory, stopping them from making orders where they cannot guarantee purchase to the local fishermen.
The Chinese people call them and give them money because they cannot buy all, and the fish, they are already dead. So where you can, you will drop them. But I blame, because of this, all blame is these people, or they are the people who call them to bring in more fish. They are the one who request. So why you cannot buy all? If you cannot request all, why you call all?
After a few days, the water regained most of its natural color, but tests found it was still unsafe. Badara Bajo from the Ganjur Environmental Protection and Development Group in Gambia now monitors the reserve. He wants the Golden Lead factory shut down, convincing the government to give it a protected status.
I'm really mad and I'm very much uncomfortable because we spend a lot of energy, lots of time for so many years. To see that arriving at an end point within a second is just devastating.
Golden Lead has been ordered to remove the wastewater pipes going to sea, to also cooperate on ecological assessment and pay for water testing and work on correcting the damage already done.
What they could do now, in the absence of wastewater treatment plant, is to ensure that all their wastewater is collected to wastewater treatment facility, which is somewhere in Kotu, several kilometers from their location.
Non-governmental environmental organization Greenpeace says West Africa has some of the richest waters in the world, but fish stocks are being depleted as industrial trawlers, some operating illegally, comb the oceans from the seabed to the surface.
Finally on the program, a South African firm has developed a groundbreaking technology that could revolutionize authentication and better fight against identity theft. Authenticate Computer Vision Labs has been working with the University of Johannesburg on the technology known as ADX for close to about 7 years now. The process works similar to the human sensory system to identify and authenticate information. The role of the eye is played by a camera which feeds information using a cable similar to the retina into the brain, or in this case the cloud where the information is processed. Developers say this kind of technology is simple enough to use on a mobile phone, but so intelligent it can benefit high-level big data entities like governments, big corporations and even law enforcement. That's Network Africa. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jacka Rogers.